Hello, everybody. In this lecture, we will be doing input output in C++. Input output. Cool. So we will be writing our first program in C++. For writing, for compiling C++ code, we need a compiler. We need a compiler on our computer system, and we will have to download the C++ compiler, or we can download a code editor like VS Code is an editor, which is Visual Studio Code. And there are some extensions which allow us to compile the code. They will automatically download a compiler for us and things like that. But we will not be doing all that. We will be compiling our code on an online editor as of now, because we want to quickly get into writing code first. And then we can, maybe after we have had some lectures, we can download our code editor and all, right? So that first we have some flow of coding, and then we will, get into installation and all, because this installation and all is sometimes, we get stuck at some point, and then it frustrates us kind of, right? So I'll quickly open an online editor. Right, so this is C++ online compiler which I'm opening, and I'll be writing my code here. So whatever is written, I'll rub all this, right? And we'll be writing our code, right? So I'll write one statement, include IOStream. So input output only works if we write this statement, right? So some part of code is needed, which we cannot write. This is a very big chunk of code. What this include IOStream does is, it basically includes a lot of code, which we cannot write, a lot of lines of code, which is necessary for our program, right? And we cannot write it. So this includes that all of it in our program, right? So that is why we are writing it. What exactly it is, how it exactly works, what is there inside IOStream, we cannot give time to it, because if we start giving time to it, it's a topic in itself, right? So that is something which we'll can't get into. But as you become a very experienced programmer, after 3-4 years maybe, then you can get into it, right? Because for whatever will be there inside IOStream, for learning that, we will have to learn coding. We'll have to learn basics of coding first, right? So that is it. Then using namespace standard also, you have to accept why we write it, and int main return 0. So this is something which you have to accept. And here we will be writing our code, right? And then slowly we will learn, like, why are we doing each and every part of it, right? So if I want to print anything in C++, for example, let's say I want to print hello world, I use the statement cout. After cout, I use these greater than signs, and whatever is to be written, I put it inside these double quotes. Hello world, let's say I have to write, and then I use a semicolon, right? So let me highlight it for you all. Just give me a minute. Let me bring on my pen. Okay, so I'll annotate it. Oh yeah, so I have my pen. So just give me a minute. So this is the statement that I have written. Cout, then these two less than signs, then whatever is to be written is inside these double quotes. And then this semicolon means my statement has ended, right? So semicolon is necessary after a statement end in C++, right? Okay, I'll rub this all, and I'll first run the program, right? So hello world is printed, right? Hello world is printed. Okay, if I would have written, let's say, hello world 1, then hello world 1 would have got printed. But let's say I don't use this double quotes. I simply write hello world 1, then I'll get an error. I'm getting an error, right? Because, whatever has to be printed inside these double quotes. Okay, instead of cout, if I use, let's say, only single less than, for example, then also we'll get an error. So this is a rule which which you have to remember as of now. Slowly we will get into the details after 4 or 5 months, that why this less than sign 2 times we are using, what does this cout mean, right? So if you have to exactly print something, you do like this, right? Hello world 1, right? One more thing that we can do here is, if I have to print hello world 1 in the first line and hello world 2 in the next line, what I can use is, I can use \n. This will take, this means that we are moving in the next line, right? So I'll run this code, right? So \n moves my output in the second line. If I don't use this \n, I'll get hello world 1 and hello world 2 in the same line, right? Okay, this is one thing that we can do. Okay, if I write cout, one more cout, and hello world 2 in the next line, then also we will get hello world 1 and hello world 2 in the same line, right? I'm getting it in the same line. Why? Because I have to, put a new line in the output stream. So there is something called as the output stream. Output stream. Okay. So output stream is a stream of characters which will be output, right? So here I have put hello world 1 in the output stream, right? Hello world 1 is in the output stream, right? So this is the stream. Now output, we don't have the output yet, but in the memory there is a stream of characters, right? Stream is basically a collection of characters. So currently hello world 1 is there in that stream. Then when we are doing cout hello world 2, we are putting hello world 2 in the stream of characters. So when finally the program has to output something, so this is what will be output, right? But if we add new line, for example, if I add here the new line character, and when this new line character goes into this output stream, right? So when this new line character, let's say here we also have the new line character. Then when before the output happens from the output stream, right? The computer interprets, okay, we have got a new line character. There is some code written which interprets this new line character and moves hello world to the next line. Whenever from the output stream, the computer encounters this symbol \n, then it automatically moves our output display to the next line, right? So I hope you got what is output stream and how this new line moves my output to the next line, right? So I'll show you again by running it again, right? So this is output. Fine. Now we have to, we'll go for the input part, right? Before going into the input part, we will have to do variables, because whatever input we take, we will have to store it somewhere, right? We cannot simply directly process the data. We will have to store our input, which we get from the user, in the memory, right? So in our computer program, we will have to take some input. So the user gives an input to our program, which we will process. We will do some processing and then we will give some output, right? Every computer program is given some input, some processing is done, and then some output comes, right? Whatever we do on the computer, this is what happens, right? Whenever I do any action on my computer, let's say I am opening a website. In that, I'm giving the website address as an input. Then with that address, some processing happens, some network calls are made, some network communication happens. And on the server, there is some computation with my data, right? Whatever input I've given, whatever website address that I've given, I not only give my website address, but while giving my website address, my computer automatically, when sending the request to the server, it also sends my computer IP address to the server. Then some processing happens, then some output is returned, right? And then I get some result. Now, for this input, I have to store it somewhere before I can process it, right? So for that, we need variables, right? So we will do very basics of computer memory, and we will get into the details of computer memory in the next lecture. So you can imagine the computer memory as an array of blocks. By array of blocks, I mean a continuous collection of boxes, array of blocks, array of blocks, where the very basic unit is of size 1 byte or 8 bits, right? Each of this block will have some address, right? Each of this block will have some address. And yeah, right. So this is how you have to imagine the computer memory. And by computer memory, we are talking about RAM. When a program is under execution, the variables that we use are temporary, like RAM stores temporary data, right? Whenever we'll have to move things in on the hard disk, then we have different functions for that, and we will come to that afterwards, right? So before using a variable, I have to declare it, right? So let's say I want an integer input from the user. I will need some block in the memory which will store whatever user enters. So I'll need an integer variable, right? So integer uses 4 blocks, right? So I'll declare an integer, and this is how an integer is declared, int a. For example, a is the name that I have to give. When I write int a, what happens is an integer. So an integer requires 4 bytes of memory. An integer requires 32 bits or 4 bytes. Why 4 bytes? Why 32 bits? We'll come to it afterwards in the next lecture of memory. So these 4 blocks will be reserved, and you can name a is given to. For a, we have this 4 blocks reserved. So whenever I'll write a, the computer will interpret it as the variable a, whose address it knows, and we can put any value inside this variable, right? So we can, I can write a equal to 5. Now, inside this a, inside these 4 blocks, the value stored is 5, right? 5. So there will be 32 bits, right? Each block has 8 bits. So this has 8 bits. 8 bits here, 8 bits here. So this is a 32-bit array, and in this 32 bits, 5 will be stored, right? If I write a equal to, 5 crore, let's say, I put 7 zeros behind this 5. Then, 1, 2, 3, 7 zeros I have put. Yeah. Then whatever will be the binary translation of 5 crore, there will be some, I don't know, some 20 bits in that 5 crore. That will be stored in these 32 bits, right? What maybe 20 bits will be needed. So other bits will be 0. Other bits in front will be 0. But whatever will be 5 crore in binary, that will be stored here. Right. So we got into a little very much detail. So let's not get into that. We can get into those details afterwards, definitely. But I hope the concept is clear. Whenever how you have to imagine the memory as an array of blocks where each block is of 1 byte, right? And whenever we declare a integer, 4 blocks are reserved. 4 blocks are reserved. Which 4 blocks? They can be any random 4 blocks. And which 4 blocks are to be selected, how they are selected, that is done all by the operating system, in which we are not getting into. And then we can store any value in this integer, right? So that is how we do. So we have seen that if we simply equate the variable to some number, then that value gets stored. But if I want that the user should enter that value, then I use this thing called cin. And now I use the greater than sign instead of the less than sign, in which I used in the cout, and I write the variable name, right? Now what will happen is, whatever user enters in the first line will be stored in A, right? So we'll run the program. So let's say I entered 5. So 5 is stored in A, right? So, but how will I know that if 5 is stored in A, I'll have to output A, right? Now, how do I output A? If I have to output the value of A, how will I do it? I can't write cout A inside the double quotes. Inside the double quotes, cout A means print A only, right? Say, let's say I print this cout A new line, then I'll get, it's asking me for an input, right? Because first I have written CNA. A is printed, but I wanted the value of A, but here A is printed, right? So what we can do here is, now why is this happening? So computer, whatever we put it inside double quotes is printed as it is. But if we have to print the value of a variable, we will do it without double quotes, right? So let me run this program. Before this hello world also, let me put a new line, because so let's say 89. So 89 is what is printed, right? So CNA, I put the value as 89. This is what was entered by me, and this is the output. 89 is the output, right? Now, why are we getting like without using double quotes, we are not getting any error. Earlier, when we did not use double quotes, we got an error. So if we are not using double quotes, and the expression that we are using, if it is a variable, then there will be no error, and the value of that variable will be printed, right? Right. So now we learned one more thing about cout. If we are not using double quotes, no double quotes, after cout, then it should be a variable, and the value of the variable is printed, right? Simple, right? So that is how we print the value of the variable. So we can do one more thing, just as an illustration. So let's print whatever we have entered. Let's print increment it by 1, and then let's print it. So I declare one more integer. So I write int b, right? So one more integer is declared in the memory, and then I write b equals a plus 1, and then I print b, right? So whatever I enter, b will be equal to that number plus 1, and then I'm giving the output as b. So if I enter 89, then 90 should be printed, right? So let me write 89, and 90 is getting printed, right? So yeah, so this is basics of input output. There are more things to input output, right? So that, like, there is, instead of new line, we can use endl. And if we want like if we want fast input output, how do we do it? So we can have one more advanced video on input output, but for the basics, this much is enough, right? So you are able to take input from the user, you are able to give an output. You can output a variable, you can output a expression, right? So this should work, right? Cool. We can have one more advanced lecture afterwards. So that was it for input output. I hope you liked the lecture and you understood everything. If you have any doubts, please ping me or Google your doubts. Thank you very much and have a nice day.